Welcome back to Investor Insight. I'm David. Today we're tackling one of the biggest questions in finance. Is the U.S. national debt a ticking time bomb? Warren Buffett's answer at the 2024 Berkshire Hathaway Annual Meeting might surprise you. He's not worried about the debt itself, but he is deeply concerned about something else. Let's watch.
This question comes from Scott Williams in Portland, Oregon. He said, do you think the net benefit of DOGE will be positive or negative for the long-term health of the United States?
Well, why don't you give me a hard one? I think that bureaucracy is something that is amazingly prevalent and contagious even in our capitalist system, and that big corporations, overwhelmingly, most of them look like they could be run better. I'm sure Berkshire does in many respects, and and government is the ultimate. So it really doesn't have any checks on it, and that's why it scares you to some extent about what the future of the currency will be, because they can print currency, and if you have people that get elected by promising people things, and that doesn't mean that they aren't sincere about all kinds of items, but there's no politician that says to anybody that, at least if they have money, that, I really think you have bad breath, and if you don't mind, would you step over away from me? It just doesn't happen. And so I think the problem of how you control revenue and expenses in government is the one that is never fully solved, and has really hurt dramatically many civilizations, and I don't think we're immune from it, and we've come close to it. But if you tell me how in a democracy you go in and really change things, we're operating at a fiscal deficit now that is unsustainable over a very long period of time. We don't know whether that means 2 years or 20 years, because there's never been a country like the United States. But you know that if something can't go on forever, it will end, to quote Herbert Stein, a famous economist. And we are doing something that is unsustainable, and it has the aspect to it that it gets uncontrollable to a certain point. I mean, essentially you just give up on it. And Paul Volcker, kept that from happening in the United States. But we came close. We've come close multiple times, and we've still had very substantial inflation in the United States, but it's never been runaway yet. And that's not something you want to try and experiment with, because it feeds on itself. So I wouldn't want the job of trying to correct what's going on in revenue and expenditures of the United States with roughly a 7% gap, when probably a 3% gap is sustainable. And then the further away you get from that, the more you get to where the uncontrollable begins. And I think that it's a job I don't want, but it's a job I think should be done, and Congress does not seem good at doing it. Well, it sounds like you should quit while I'm ahead.
Buffett does something crucial here. He separates the volume of debt from the real danger. Unlike the doom and gloom crowd, Buffett isn't terrified by the size of U.S. debt. Why? Because there's no real alternative to the dollar as the world's reserve currency. The euro has structural problems. The yuan isn't freely convertible. The dollar remains the least bad option, giving the U.S. extraordinary flexibility. But here's the critical part. The real danger isn't how much debt exists. It's what happens if inflation gets out of control. This is what keeps Buffett concerned. Inflation being let loose in a way that threatens the entire system. He's not speaking theoretically. Buffett lived through the 1970s. He watched Paul Volcker make brutal decisions in the early 1980s to save the financial system, raising rates to nearly 20%, triggering a recession, getting vilified. But Volcker stopped the spiral. Now, Buffett makes a distinction most people miss: monetary policy versus fiscal policy. Jay Powell and the Fed control monetary policy, interest rates, and money supply. Buffett calls Powell wise and respects how he handles this. But Powell doesn't control fiscal policy. He doesn't decide government spending or taxes. That's Congress. And this is where the real problem lives. Buffett says Powell sends disguised messages to the government, essentially pleading with them to pay attention to the fiscal deficit, because Powell knows he can't fix a fiscal problem with monetary tools alone. This is key. We should focus much more on the fiscal deficit than on every Fed decision. The Fed is responding to conditions created by fiscal policy. They're managing symptoms, not curing the disease. And here's the psychological danger. When people believe cash is trash because of inflation, you create a destabilizing feedback loop. People rush into any assets just to avoid holding depreciating cash. This drives bubbles and terrible investment decisions. So, what does this mean for you? The real risk isn't U.S. default. That's extremely unlikely. The risk is currency erosion through inflation, which is a hidden tax on dollar-denominated assets. Focus on fiscal policy, not just the Fed. Government spending, deficits, tax policies, that's what drives long-term inflation risk. And avoid the cash is trash panic. Don't rush into overpriced investments just to escape cash. Instead, own businesses with pricing power and assets that maintain real value through inflation. Buffett's message is optimistic but cautious. The dollar's position is secure for now, but we shouldn't be complacent about fiscal discipline. The greatest risk isn't the debt we see, it's the inflation we might unleash. Thanks for watching Investor Insight. Subscribe for more analysis of what really matters in investing, and remember, focus on the right risks, not the loudest fears.